Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here and taking part in this candidate forum sponsored by Indivisible Forest Grove. I'm Don Schweitzer, Professor of Social Work at Pacific University, and I'll be your moderator tonight. Before we begin, I want to be clear about the purpose of tonight's event. The forum is not intended to endorse any candidate. It's an opportunity for the public to hear directly from the candidates and to engage them on issues that are important to them. I'd also like to note that all candidates were invited to participate in this forum, even though not all candidates chose to attend. So let me walk you through tonight's event. For the first half, we will feature the candidates for Metro Council District 4. And then then we'll take a 10-minute break. And then in the second half, we'll be asking questions of Metro Council President candidates. A few guidelines to help us get the most of our time tonight. First, so that all candidates will respond to the next question, to the same question. So please make sure your questions are broad enough so that everybody can answer them. Second, to allow for as many voices as possible, we ask that each question be asked in under 30 seconds. And you'll have these timers up here that you'll be able to watch on that. And then each candidate will be given 2 minutes to respond. We appreciate your help in keeping things concise so we can include more questions. Third, we ask that you keep clapping to a minimum and avoid cheering. This helps us stay focused on the question and ensures we can use our time effectively. Finally, the process will work like this. You will hear me call out your raffle ticket number. If you submitted a question, you got a raffle ticket number. When you hear that number, walk up here to one of these microphones and ask your question. Thank you again for being here tonight and for contributing to a respectful and engaging conversation. Let's get started. I'll introduce our first two candidates tonight, Miles Palacios, and Alex Phan. Please give them a round of applause. And we'll start by giving each candidate 2 minutes as just an introduction. Kind of introduce yourself and kind of a 2-minute opening. And so I'll alternate questions. So just because you're here on this side, we'll start with Alex.
Fantastic. Well, good evening, Forest Grove. It's a pleasure and honor to be in front of you tonight to share more about our campaign. Again, my name is Alex Phan. I'm a lifelong Washington County resident. My parents immigrated here from Vietnam in 1975 with 4 children. They didn't have me until 9 years after. My entire young life, we moved from apartment to apartment. We lived in about 10 different apartments that I can recall. And all of that was a goal for my dad to be able to save every penny he could to finally be able to purchase a home. It took him about 20 years until after they had settled here in Washington County before he could afford buying that first home. And when he passed 5 years ago, the only wealth he ever left behind for my mom and my siblings and I was the equity held in that house. I learned from a very young age, once he had that home, that housing was more than just stability and safety and security. For us now, it turned into opportunity. For us to be able to care for my mom in her age and her phase of her life now, it's been dramatically important for us. Professionally, I've been a real estate agent for the last 19 years, working all throughout the region and also in Southwest Washington. I dedicated my career to helping people achieve the same benefit that my parents were able to when they purchased that home. So I work with many first-time home buyers still, all the way to generations here who are now selling their homes. So outside of my real estate work, I've also tried to give back to the community as much as possible. I've served on the board for Home Plate Youth Services, which is Washington County's only service provider for youth that have housing instability or suffering from homelessness. I was also on the Clean Water Services Advisory Commission, and now I'm excited to level up to this next, to Metro Council. I'm really concerned about our region, that the opportunities for my children, I have 2 kids, are slipping away. So we really need to focus on rebounding and turning this ship around. Thank you.
Hi folks, my name is Miles Palacios. I was born and raised out in McMinnville, Oregon, so the heart of my country there. My father was an educator, and my mother a city employee, and 4 amazing siblings, so big families up here today. Growing up in McMinnville was an opportunity for me to learn a lot from two public servants and parents. The deeply tied nexus of leadership and service, giving back to my community and understanding the importance of leading with service at the front of mind. A lot of that came into fruition in a lot of the work that I did at the university level. Went to University of Oregon, where I was deeply involved in my community there, through student government and other opportunities with local advocacy-based organizations representing students at the university level. After university, I dove right into being a part of my community. At first, it was as an assistant winemaker for a family winery out in McMinnville. But then I quickly transitioned to working in public service and government. From there, I have worked as a legislative staffer for state senators, representatives, and for Governor Brown, working in the space of carbon policy, as well as education and healthcare. I have also worked in spaces for the counties, the cities, and the special districts as a lobbyist, handling governance, tax, and revenue policies. And currently I'm the Chief of Staff for Senator Lindsay Campos out here in Washington County. I'm also currently elected with the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District. The reason I'm so targeted on Metro is the importance of this particular government agency for issues of economic development, transportation, and affordable housing, as well as the beauty of our region with our agricultural spaces, as well as conservation and our recreation spaces. Thank you for having me.
Right, thank you. I think something that could be helpful for folks in the audience tonight, 2 weeks ago we heard from statewide offices, Senate and House districts. Last week we heard from Washington County and what they do. And I wonder if maybe you could each take 2 minutes to kind of help folks understand how does Metro fit within these other elected bodies, and to just give people kind of a bird's eye view of this, make sure everybody's kind of on the same page. So Miles, we'll start with you, 2 minutes, and we'll come to Alex.
So Metro is a weirdly unique special district. So it's not a city or county kind of level of government. It's unique because it's one of the only of its kind throughout the nation. It covers Willamette, a lot of different counties within the valley here. Clackamas County, Multnomah County, Washington County, as well as 24 cities and all the special districts that fall in between. The work that they do covers waste management in the region, as well as the urban growth boundary, which is the line that we set for where we can build housing, where we can build industrial zones. It really takes into account all our rural reserves and urban reserves, as well as you probably know, with a big topic that's been happening in the legislature lately with economic development, specifically out here in this West Washington County area. Other pieces that it's involved in is, of course, the Oregon Zoo, as well as the affordable housing spaces and transportation. With the affordable housing spaces, probably one of the big things that folks really need to recognize and understand, because their tax dollars are going to it, is the Supporting Housing Services Program. A big program that's focused on keeping people housed, preventing evictions, as well as making investments in our community to help transition people from unstable housing to more secure housing, long-term housing. The other thing that I think is really important for us to think about is transportation. While Metro is not the beginning and end for when it comes to transportation in this area, they are very deeply intertwined with the work that TriMet does, as well as the counties. And so they play a huge role in, as we think about transportation growth in the region, as we think about bringing out more opportunities for freight, for our companies out here, as well as road users, but also transportation opportunities for the public, such as our MAX lines and buses.
So Metro, I want to highlight, I'll try not to highlight different things that Miles might not have mentioned. It is unique. It's not the only regional government in this country, but it's the only elected regional government. So I think that's what makes it really special, in case you know. It was designed to help really manage growth. Why do we have a metro in the first place? And as we all know, Oregon's just abundantly full of just amazing environment and natural resources that people people love here is when people are moving here in abundance, they decided, hey, we need to limit sprawl. We need to make sure we don't experience what we've seen in Texas and other states. So Metro was designed to really manage growth. And what I see Metro also doing is stepping up a lot of the times when our county partners or our city partners are facing challenges that they alone cannot tackle. And so being able to have another entity like Metro be able to step up and step in to manage things that Miles mentioned, like the affordable housing bond, like the supportive housing services tax measure, those are extremely important because again, no individual county or city can tackle that alone. And so other things that Metro helps manage, you mentioned the Oregon Zoo. We also have the Expo Center and Convention Center. Those are really important. They used to manage the Portland 5 Art Centers. They handed that back to the city. I think you talked about waste management, so solid waste, including, so that's garbage and recycling. They work with all of our different haulers to make sure that they set the rates for those and, again, be as efficient as possible. What else would be unique about Metro? I think that's pretty much, he hit most of it, so that's it.
Thank you. Okay, so the first ticket number is 1625725. 1625725. Going once. Oh, right on.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you for this opportunity to ask a question to you two. And first off, I want to say that whoever does the creation of the Metro bulletin that comes out, the big one, my hat's off to that person because it has the beautiful parks, regional parks that Metro also, and I'm taking my time for that, but here's what I want to ask. Even though transportation for light rail is not under the jurisdiction, as you said, of Metro, what is your position, positive or negative, on having TriMet, because you could probably leverage funding, I believe, having the Metro being the Max line come from Hillsborough to Cornelius and Forest Grove. The population of Forest Grove is 20% elders who rely on public transportation. Thank you.
So I think this time we're starting over here, right?
Thank you. I think that would be incredible. When I was a young person, 15, my first job was actually at the Oregon Zoo, which is Metro, and I would take 2 bus lines just to get to the transit center and then hop on the Max. And so transportation connects us to opportunities, and as you mentioned, even for our aging population, that becomes their primary mode of transportation. I think absolutely I would be in favor and support. Of course, that's something that I would want to speak with both Cornelius and Forest Grove about to make sure that that is something that they in fact wanted and see how we can partner to support that.
Thank you. Miles?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like Alex here, I'm also in favor. I think that one of the experiences that I've noticed in my own lived experiences in most recent times, I'm epileptic and newly diagnosed, and so I needed to start using transportation as my only mode of transportation for months. Anything that used to take me to be a 5-10 minute drive, now 30-45 minutes to get anywhere. And during that time, having to travel around TV Highway and other parts of the district for the work that I do, I needed to have the opportunity to make sure that I wasn't going to be late. But I also did have the opportunity to meet a lot of people who do use our public transit system. People from Hillsborough, from Cornelius, from the Forest Grove area, that are traveling on public transit anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half just to get to work. Then they're working a full day, and then they need to still figure out how to get home, see their kids, take care of their own mental health or their physical health. And there's just not enough time in the day. Having more expansive light rail would help with that. Metro had the transportation bond on the ballot in 2020, and it didn't pass. It's something that we really need to go back to the drawing board for. We understand that corporations did not like the idea of a 0.75% on their payroll taxes, And we get that, but we need to have those conversations, and we need to ensure that it's not just on the burden of our middle-class taxpayers for us to do expansive growth of our transportation programs. So we need to go back to the drawing board and have those real conversations and ensure that we have all perspectives represented at the table.
Thank you. All right, 1625720.
Thanks for coming. My question is, I hate to go back to this, but I'm still slightly unclear about what Metro does, and it seems like there's layers of government, and I'm wondering if that could be a problem, if you see any issues with that, how to streamline things, and sometimes just getting some of these housing projects or things done can just be so cumbersome, and there's so much red tape and everything. Can you give an example possibly of how Metro was able to lead a project and manage it, or work with other agencies, and how it was effective, or maybe how it wasn't? Because I think this might be a question for people too.
Okay, Miles?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. There are some great examples for what Metro does well and what it doesn't do well, especially in the space of how it operates. A good way to think about Metro is that it is set up not to be an umbrella of government for cities or special districts that fall within partnership with it, or even the counties. They have access to dollars that a lot of other governments don't have, like the local share bond. And in terms of what those dollars actually go to, as a member of the elected board for THPRD, we've worked with Metro for specific opportunities to build out parks, to build out routes. The thing is very similar to my experiences as the executive director of a nonprofit. The same way of bringing in dollars from the government is very similar to trying to bring in dollars to a nonprofit. When you're applying for grants or these funds that are available to you, it can be really difficult to cut through the red tape. And often what we find is that those dollars get left on the table because we can't make it happen. Metro could do a better job of making sure those dollars are getting to people. A good example of that is the 2040 grant program that Metro has. It's a grant program they put together to give out a little over $4 million each cycle. Each year, they've given out just shy of $40 million of that over 5 cycles. The third cycle being one where they had no applicants. So any county, any city could have applied for these grants specifically for development in their communities to help make economic growth or to make roads safer. And the excuse that I was given when asked why did we not get anyone to apply for this grant in our third cycle, the answer was, well, no one applied. Well, that's not a good enough answer. I always say in the work that I've done with superintendents is that it's good to have an open door policy, but you need to have an empty office policy. If electeds and the employees of Metro aren't meeting people where they're at, they're not doing them a service.
Thank you.
One great example I can cite is our recent supportive housing services tax measure. In 2020, as our city, as our region is facing a huge homelessness surge and crisis on the street, Metro came and put forth this tax measure to be able to bring in the money needed to be able to build out more shelters, more housing and services. We're in year 6 of that implementation. The people were feeling frustrated, feeling like, hey, we're not seeing the results that we were hoping for and expecting to see. So how that works is Metro collects the tax and then divides it between the 3 counties. The 3 counties then partner with different service providers and different non-government entities to be able to provide the services directly. Recently, this last year, I was appointed to serve on the SHS reform work group with all the different stakeholders. That was the first time actually that Metro brought in service providers to that discussion, something they had not done before. And we went through a series of 12 meetings where we were trying to work on figuring out exactly how to deliver out the outcomes that the voters wanted to see. Because that tax measure is going to expire or sunset in 4 years in 2030. And so it's very critically important that we regain public trust in how those dollars are being delivered and how effective they are, because if the voters do not approve of an extension of that, then all of the infrastructure that we've now built and all the services that we're providing are going to collapse. We're going to lose that. And so Metro is going to be taking a more hands-on approach. They took the feedback that we had in that work group session again and have consolidated the oversight committees to again be more streamlined and effective. And in that oversight committee, we have service providers now also participating, because ultimately they are the ones, you know, who are the boots on the ground, working directly with the people that we want to serve, and so their input and value is extremely valuable.
All right, thank you. All right, 162-5722.
Wow, this is a first for me. Thank you very much for coming. I have an overall umbrella question and then specific little tidbits under the information that you gave at your first introduction to us. The umbrella question is over Senate Bill 1586. That was rather a debacle this year in that short session. And there is a number of acres that are still kind of in question, in my mind anyway, around 1,400. And it was stated by Senator Solomon last night at a meeting she had that that was going to now be in Metro's purview. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Specifically, for your point, Phan, you're a real estate agent. Do you see any conflict of interest in that kind of area? And you are also on the Clean Water Services Advisory Commission. They've had a bit of a challenge with some of their operations. So if you have time to speak to that. And Miles, for you, you have lobbyist background and you have economic development background. How do you see that affecting your opinions on the 1586, 1,400 acre future? And it's in my backyard.
All right, thank you. I think Alex starts this one.
Thank you for the great question. I am personally in support of that bill. I agree. I listened to all the testimony that was provided against it, and I agree. They tried to accomplish a lot in a short session, so there wasn't enough proper timing to really connect with the community to get feedback. But why do I say I support that? People again we're facing a challenging time right now. Businesses and industry continue to leave our state. We are a state that relies heavily on income tax. So as these companies continue to invest elsewhere in other states, we as a community are being left behind. As housing professionals, I have clients in Washington County who work for high-tech companies who were part of those layoffs. And they unfortunately have lost the equity in their home that they've worked so hard to achieve. They are now unemployed. They are now having no choice but to, again, find work out of our state to be able to provide for their family. The legislature recognized this as a huge issue, that again, companies are leaving because we frankly don't have enough industrial land available to be around that high-tech corridor. I want to be clear, I'm not supportive of any data centers in the case that comes up, and it's a yes and question. If we were, we can expand on that. I want to make sure I answer all your other topics. In terms of conflicts of interest, it's always, of course, you have to disclose if there are any potential conflicts of interest. I don't perceive at this point any conflicts of interest. I'm not representing any of those landowners there at all. So again, if there was ever a vote or a decision, I would make it known if there was a conflict and abstain from any vote if that was necessary. And then in terms of, I don't currently serve on Clean Water Services Advisory Commission. My term ended about a year and a half ago, about 2 years ago now, when I stepped off of that.
Thank you. Miles?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I don't know about this most recent comment about the either be it the 300 acres or the 1,400 that would be back in the purview of Metro. However, I'm very familiar with 1586, so I have been working back in the legislature for a few years now. You mentioned my comment about my lobby time, but in the last year and change here, been working as the Chief of Staff for Senator Campos. The first job I had in the legislature was for Senator Saltman back in 17. We are still close friends, and I think the beauty about that friendship is that I can disagree with her, and we can still work together. I think that this was not the right bill to bring at the time. I think it was the short session trying to rush through with a massive undertaking of taking something that has been locked away for 12 years when it was first made into a rural reserve, 1,700 acres, that only the state could touch and not Metro. Trying to solve that in the course of 5 weeks is a massive undertaking. I do think that it opened the conversation and it creates a lot of opportunity for us moving forward. We need to be thoughtful about growth and sprawl, especially when we're talking about agricultural land, because once you move agricultural land to industrial land, there's no going back. So we need to be thoughtful about the resources that we have. I am supportive of this particular plot of land, looking at the opportunities that we have for it, for economic development, and I am glad that there was cutouts in that bill that said that there wouldn't be standalone data centers or commercial warehouses, like Amazon warehouses and things like that, really trying to put a focus on creating jobs for the region. There's still a lot of work to be done. Try to quickly answer your question about the counties. I don't see conflict of interest there. My policy work, I think, has only made me stronger in terms of understanding the need and being able to communicate with members of our community about that need.
All right, thank you. All right, 1625724.
All right, so I'm going to try not to ask this in a leading way, but I can't imagine not having an opinion on it. So we are facing a housing crisis right now. And a lot of the talk on that has been about trying to end homelessness. But the fact is that there will be unhoused people. And one thing that I see a lot is infrastructure, park benches, sidewalks, designed to make it impossible for people who are sleeping rough to rest there. What is your opinion on that particular design choice?
Yeah, that's I'm sorry, it's not right. Okay. That's a really good question. I think one of the realities that we are often finding in the conversation about housing and fighting the epidemic of houselessness in our communities, as well as just the nation as a whole, is making sure that people feel safe. We've continued to push for shelter beds, for affordable housing units throughout the region, and many of those affordable housing units are empty. Many of those shelter beds, if you look towards Portland Metro or Portland proper, many of those shelter beds that Wilson had done by the end of the year stand empty. And a lot of that is because we're not putting enough of an emphasis on the caseworkers and the support systems that take that to transitional, more secure housing. Specific to your question about infrastructure, it is one of those things where there are public places that are available to people for them to often find themselves a place to rest and ways for them to be supported. When we are talking about specifically the public spaces within our communities, I think one of the things that we have as a priority is to help those people transition into safer places to be resting. And that is something that we'll need to work on closer with the local municipalities, as it is not something that Metro has a say over in terms of whether or not a bench is going to be available for someone to rest on or not. So I'm thinking about those benches specifically with armrests in the middle, uncomfortable infrastructure in different spaces. We have to be more thoughtful and not demean the experience of those folks who are houseless.
I'm not as familiar with what goes into the process of design for these benches in different areas, but I think the heart of the question to me revolves similar to what Miles shared, is about safety. It can also create unsafe conditions for, say, a young person who's using public transportation, or the opposite, a senior person. They may be uncomfortable if, say, that was being used for shelter. At the same time, I think we do need safer access points for public transportation. So again, we're in Oregon, it rains a lot, but it could change on a dime, and so we do need to have more access points that are safer in general and have more coverage. But I think it'd be a very dangerous slope to make it more accessible to be used for more or less encampments. I would be very concerned about that.
Thank you. All right, so that's the end of the submitted questions for tonight. Did anybody come up? You have another question you want to ask?
Thank you. I believe, Alex, you mentioned the Clean Water Services Commission that you served on. I'd like both of your perspective on how did it happen that there was such a debacle in misused funds? And the other question is, what do you see as a remedy to make sure that it wouldn't happen again? Thank you.
And Miles, starting this time.
I think I started last one.
Did you start? I kind of start losing track as we go on, so feel free to call us.
Okay. So for full transparency, I served on the advisory commission, so not the board of directors. The advisory commission is charged with understanding Clean Water's overall plans and how it's really more of an educational piece. And of course, we can provide input, but the circumstances that led up to the drama really were outside of our purview. We were not made aware of that, and so if you're unfamiliar, Clean Water Services had created a captive insurance company that was then based in the state of Hawaii, which is one of the most friendliest states for those types of insurance agencies. And they would have conferences, not they, but the industry of captive insurers would have conferences, and they would hold it in the state of Hawaii at these pretty luxurious destinations. And so I think there was a lot of overspending of public dollars to attend and participate in those meetings. I think, of course, it should have been more transparent. I can't really speak more than that because again, we didn't have knowledge of those types of activities.
Yeah, so a lot of what happened with Clean Water Services is something that has run rampant in government for decades. Something that was really present with our state level government, which was a huge reason why they established the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, to ensure that there wasn't misuse of state dollars or local dollars in situations such as these. For this particular instance, it's unfortunate that there was not better oversight while those things were happening. Unfortunate, maybe too passive a word, it's unacceptable. As I think about the systems that the state uses to ensure proper reporting and those types of requirements to ensure that tax dollars are being appropriately spent, especially when they are funding what sounds like it could have been a very informational conference, that they are doing it in the most cost-effective way as possible. Whenever we fly for the state or anything like that, I'm sitting very far back in the plane, and we are almost in bunk beds when we're traveling. So I mean, that's part of the gig of being a public servant. You do the best that you can, trying to make the public dollars stretch as best as possible.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah.
I'm Dale Feek, and I've attended the Washington County Advisory Committee meeting for many years, and you were there, and I've attended the County Commission meetings for many years. It appears to me like Clean Water Services many times in the urban growth boundary ends up because their fee determines how they pay their staff, that they end up supporting development outside of their jurisdiction and encourage development. What do you think about that as a tactic of Clean Water Services?
Miles?
Yeah, I know this question is one for me to start, and I'm having trouble giving you a good answer because I don't know exactly what Clean Water Services is doing specifically in this region when it comes to economic development. What I will say is that something that I know is a big piece of the conversation, thinking strictly to this most recent conversation about 1586 and the Jobs Act, is that when we are talking about expanding industrial spaces, we also need to really think about how water and electricity are going to run to those spaces. I think a lot about how industrial zone areas in the West Hills are impossible to build on because of slope and things like that, and the cost of running water up there would be even more difficult. So I do think that there's probably things at play, but it is a little too granular for me to give a direct answer in terms of how CWS engages in this. But thank you for the question.
Well, I will say that CWS, while maybe not perfect because of the recent controversies, we should be blessed that we have lower rates about by 40% than the other counties. And so, and what I learned through that experience is that CWS also made a lot of business investments to create opportunities to be able to sell the other byproducts from when they go through the waste treatment. Fertilizers, that's one of the off products that they created. They would commercialize that to sell that. All that money helps keep the rates low for us here in Washington County. So Dale, I think I was very appreciative of the work that CWS did do.
All right, thanks. Did I see another hand go up back here for a question? Is that, oh, okay, you want to come up?
So Metro does lots of things, obviously, and I was just wondering whether there are some, what are the most interesting projects or issues that are going on in like transportation or natural resources protection or maybe even affordable housing? What are some of the more interesting projects or issues that are floating right now that we'll hear more about in the next few years that you are interested in and want to participate in?
Yes.
Okay. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the supportive housing services tax measure, that's going to be a real key priority over the next 2 years to rebuild voter trust and confidence that the tax dollars that they've invested in are delivering the outcomes that we as a region want. There are lots of different projects that the council gets to participate and work on. I'd really love to see the push for a faster I-5 bridge project to further connect us to our partners up north. I think that's going to only help us grow as a region. I think that parks continue to be one of those other investment areas, so to be able to preserve as many parks and natural resources as we have. The affordable housing bond is ended, basically. It's going to be, those dollars are spent up through 28, and so that's not going to be a phase right now that we're looking at. But I think my priorities, as if I'm elected to the council along with the rest of the members, is how do we again grow economic growth for our region? How do we bring prosperity back for our citizens? Because if we continue on the path that we've been on for a couple of years now, I'm really afraid of what it's going to do for the opportunities for people who live here, our young people, and our seniors.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's always nice talking about the things we're excited for, so thank you for that. To echo a little bit of what Alex said, I'm also very excited about what we have in the future for affordable housing work. Supporting housing services will be coming back up for a possible revote in 2030. There's a lot of amazing opportunity there. Some of the work that Metro has done, everyone's got their critiques, but I'm really proud of what Metro has done in trying to move that forward in terms of affordable housing spaces. They've been a great partner out here in Washington County for a lot of big projects. There's a project, so I'm a renter out in along the station. From my apartment, I can see a building that's coming up right now that Metro has worked on. The city of Beaverton, Washington County, nonprofits like BNSTAR, and even THPRD is participating in affordable housing spaces right now. And we have about 120 units that are coming in there. They're going to be available for families 30% under the median family income line and even 60% under the median family income line. There's a lot of exciting things that are going to be happening in that space. Other places that I would talk about would definitely be within the spaces of transportation. There is a lot of great opportunity along TV Highway to make it safer. When we're talking about TV Highway, I think about my experiences as a rider and standing about 3 feet from where a car would be zipping on past on TV Highway there. Unsheltered spaces alongside folks who may not be as able-bodied, or alongside folks who don't have the means to stay warm in the fall and in the winter. It makes it very difficult to be a rider. The last thing is a big plug for the Parks District is that really would be excited to see the growth of our South Cooper Mountain spaces. There's about 100 acres out there that we're really excited about possibly purchasing and being able to turn into more park trails and conservation spaces in our region.
Right, thank you. Others? Yeah. Come on.
My name is Stuart Nestor, local resident. This is a question that has confounded me a little bit because I was here when Metro got started. And I remember when we all voted on that, and it said, they will have no taxing rights. They're just going to be an organization that's going to facilitate the 3 counties. So one, I have a two-part question. The first part of it is, how do we go from a cooperative 3-county organization that suddenly got taxing rights? And two, the second part of the question is, could you relate your relationship to TriMet? I see TriMet as a 3-county transportation, and you're involved in transportation, although I think a little bit differently. So I would like to understand just that interface between you and TriMet. So I get a better understanding of what you guys do. So it's about understanding more fully, one, how you got to be where you are, and why this is good for all of us.
Got it. Yeah, lovely. Thank you for that question. Just to kind of reiterate here, how we got Metro to where we're at right now, the type of body that it is, and then the other piece is the relationship that Metro has with TriMet and transportation in the region. So for the former, I was not around when Metro was initiated as a government entity. My understanding is that the role that it has stepped into has been one that has been rising to meet the needs of what has been made necessary in the region. So my understanding is when it was first created is to be kind of that binding agent, but now it has been to the point with being able to open up taxing as opportunities to bring in dollars that are then dispersed back out to the counties. A good example, I mean, we've been talking about it a lot tonight, the Supporting Housing Services program, because those dollars are divvied up and they're sent back out to the different counties. On the Metro website, they do a great job of breaking that information down and linking to each of the counties about how those dollars are being spent. Having that ability to have a cooperative growth mindset for the region being led by a binding agent like Metro brings a lot of opportunity. And it also brings the necessity of accountability. So asking the right questions, making sure that your dollars are being spent appropriately. When it comes to transportation, Metro, while they don't run TriMet, they're still a partner to TriMet and partner to the state. When they bring dollars up, they are then engaging with how those dollars should be spent, similar with the local share bond. They're communicating with parties that could utilize those dollars and putting them towards projects that would benefit the community at large. So they're not the ones deciding all things, but they are a critical partner to the work that's happening.
the work of Metro continues to expand not out of desire, but because of necessity. Metro's had to continue adding on more work, essentially because, as we mentioned, or I mentioned earlier, if the individual counties or cities don't have their own capacity to be able to tackle a project like that, that's where Metro steps up. And that's something that I'm excited to be part of. At the same time, I mentioned that the 5 art centers that Metro gave back to the city of Portland, that was never part of the original scope either of what Metro's responsibilities were to be, but the city found itself in a position where it could not operate these on its own and needed a partner like Metro to step up again. And so that's where Metro's been very critical in helping us be the glue or binding agent, as Miles mentioned, to really make sure that, again, we provide the highest quality services and systems to our community. As he mentioned, Metro doesn't manage TriMet. It's a partner. Of course, maybe you're aware that TriMet is struggling right now. Who isn't struggling, to be honest? But you have low ridership. You've got increasing operational expenses, and there is talk. Is that something that Metro should be managing at this point? I surely hope not. I think that we have to make sure that companies are adaptable to serve the trends and needs that we have now. And we know that things have changed, right? Work from home, that's never going to change and go back. So I think we as a region always have to be adaptable. You have to be able to change. And when something's not working anymore, you got to go back to the drawing board and figure out, again, how can we best serve the community with the assets that we have and make them more efficient and more reliable.
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah.
I'll hurry back to the time. My question to you both, you have kind of already talked about the urban growth boundary, but when the urban growth boundary is being considered for being changed, what are your considerations? What's like your criteria for adjusting the urban growth boundary? Thank you.
Yes, that's it. Yep.
It comes down to capacity of readiness. For example, if Forest Grove wanted to expand, I think a Metro Council would be excited to say, that's wonderful. Or do we have the capacity to and infrastructure ready? We mentioned about sewer and clean water services, right? You can't expand if you don't have the capacity to deliver that, and that'd be a waste of the expansion. For example, when Damascus was brought into the urban growth boundary, but they did not have the infrastructure or financial capacity to be able to execute on that growth. That was a wasted, my words, a wasted opportunity, basically. And so I think we would want to talk to all of our cities, of course, our counties, to see what level of preparation are they able to execute on if we granted an expansion.
The infrastructure piece is critical. We need to make sure, I mentioned about the cost of running electricity and clean water. All those aspects are something that if a local municipality is not ready to go, we can't do it. I think the other thing that I really think about when I'm thinking about the growth boundary and the opportunities that it brings is the reality that our working age Oregonians are dwindling. Right now, we are expecting a growth in our 65 plus population to skyrocket over the next decade, while birth rates are plummeting. And then also migration rates are starting to slow down as well. Working people is a commodity that we don't have. And it is not enticing to come here for work, especially when a lot of really good paying jobs are being laid off. It is making it difficult for our economy out in this space, and we are struggling. So when thinking about expanding the growth boundary and the investments that we could find in our economy because of it, we need to be thoughtful about the types of jobs that are possibly coming in as a result, as well as where those people are going to be living. Right now, I'm 33 years old, still a renter. I don't think the idea of a house is really in my future at all. And that is a case of many folk my age and younger, is that we can't afford to live close to where we work. We we can't afford to have the dreams of buying a home, and a lot of us have made peace with that. It's not a bad thing to be a vendor, but it is something that we need to be thoughtful of with sprawl as well, making sure that there are good spaces for folks to live that are accessible to the jobs that they have, and I think that's one of the important things that we have to consider when we're thinking about the development of our
Right, thank you. Well, I think I want to give the candidates kind of the final time here tonight, a couple minutes to kind of a closing statement, and maybe you could help us understand like why we should vote for Miles or why we should vote for Alex. And that. So, Miles, you get the first 2 minutes.
Absolutely, thank you so much. At the beginning of this conversation, I mentioned that my childhood with a father in education and a mother who was a public servant taught me that the ideas of service and leadership are deeply intertwined. I have, in this last decade living in this community, given myself fully to that mindset, be it in the work that I've done for the state, for the local government and the communities in this space, or through the nonprofit that I ran for a number of years and worked with all 4 of the high schools in Hillsborough, was a participant in that program when I was a kid, and would come out to Forest Grove and see many of the classmates that I had that wanted to grow in their community. Community is really centered on opportunity, and for a leader to step up and give the best opportunity to a community, they need to understand what the deepest struggles are. That is something that I believe that I understand quite well and have left myself open to learning more about. Stay hungry in terms of what I want to know, and I also recognize that the status quo is never as old as people think, which means that we have to also keep ourselves open and malleable to new opportunities for our region. A vote for me is a vote for someone who knows how to do the work, who knows how to listen, and who knows how to partner. And that's what I want to be for this community.
Thank you. Alex?
I share many similar experiences growing up. I can remember Christmas where we were getting a box of food dropped off and a bag of new clothes. My parents couldn't afford to buy me those types of things, and it was one of the most exciting parts of my life. My father and my mother both are very patriotic Americans. In their eyes, as they escaped their country from war, America was their savior. And so when they raised me, it was always about giving back to the community, because that was the community they found here that supported them in their lives and through all of their hardships and challenges. And so I've always had a huge servant's heart. I give a lot of my time volunteering for many different nonprofits myself, and thankfully managed to be a successful realtor. Not by luck, but by really hard work. It's very challenging for me to enter an industry where I did not have a lot of support, I did not have any mentorship, and I had to figure all of that out on my own. Throughout my entire life, people have always told me, you should run for office one day, Alex. You know, the way you show up, the way that you give back, and the way you treat people with respect and integrity, and the way that you're always trying to help, you should run. And I never really believed that in myself, but fast forward, here I am today, and I'm running because I worry about my children's future. I worry about my parents' future. I'm really honored to have the support and endorsement from the current counselor, Juan Carlos Gonzalez, back there. Thank you, Juan. And a majority of the Metro Council. This week, the Oregonian and Willamette Week both believe that I am the best candidate to serve on this council. So I hope that I can have your support as well, and your vote and confidence that I will always show up every single day. I will work hard, and I will fight for our communities here in Washington County.
All right, thank you. Please give our candidates a warm. All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and have the second round.